right? And when I decided to shed it all and raise the bar for how I was operating, that's when I fucking quantum leapt in Q3 and Q4 and stacked almost 200K in sales over just a couple of months.
Welcome to Did I Stutter with Jill Perick. And yeah, I probably did because I have a stuttering disability. But I'm also a multiple six-figure business and mindset coach who's here to help you shut down the mindfuckery of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and playing the nice girl in your content so you and your brand can blow the fuck up and so you can stack the motherfucking cash. I'm holding absolutely nothing back. We're talking marketing, messaging, mindset, subconscious healing, nervous system regulation, and how to do it all even with raging anxiety, ADHD, and just being a fucking human. If fuck is one of your favorite words and nothing can get in between you, your iced coffee, or the work that you're here to do, I'm your girl. Let's dive in.
Despite the beginning of 2025 being a motherfucking shit show, I rebounded so much in the last half of the year and was stacking multiple six figures in sales, and still am continuing to into this year. Like, I have more recurring revenue than I've ever had before into the rest of the year, and I am certain that I'm going to have almost more than a 250K cash year this year, Canadian cash year. And I wanted to record this for you because there were a lot of times last year where my heart broke. Like, my heart genuinely broke, but I also broke every single pattern that was keeping my rates and my standards on the fucking floor. And that is what I believed really broke me through having short-term contracts, feeling like selling my low ticket, mid-ticket offers was the only thing that I could do, and I couldn't sign people at higher ticket contracts for higher ticket rates for longer than 3 months, when now I have clients that have signed on for a year, for a year and a half, for 2 years, and that is so normal for me now. But there were a lot of things leadership wise and character wise that I had to go through that I really wished that I didn't have to, and I would avoid it. And I would think to myself, I don't need to be a person that goes through that. Like, everybody would talk about how hard it is and how there are so many relationships that get ruined and things that happen. And I would be like, that's not going to happen to me. But I wanted to tell you like some of the things that did happen and that I survived and I got through. But like, it was still so difficult. And all of these things were very necessary. So I stopped playing the victim. So I stopped holding on to people that were not going to be able to come with me, and it actually changed everything about how I was able to stack those multiple six figures in sales at the tail end of last year and now are coming into this year. And it just also, like, the way that I run the business now, it looks so different. The structure, my signature offers, the power I feel in my smaller offers, how I'm constructing the smaller offers. I'm not like over delivering because I feel like I need to. I'm not over delivering and undercharging. Like, there is just so much that is different now. And it's because of these things. So one of these things was my heart broke when it was obvious that a long-term client had muted my stories and like told me that she was going to pass when I doubled my rates. And I invited her into the new iteration of my signature offer. Like, it felt like such a blow to my heart because it was obvious she wasn't watching any of my stories anymore. And we had worked very closely together. And then just her tone in which she said like, yeah, I'm going to pass, when I was like, hey, like, this is how the space is upgrading. Would you like to come inside? And I had to learn from that experience and that not everybody is supposed to come with me. And whether she was ready for that next level version of me, whether she was like, nah, I don't need to do this, I needed to detach from whatever potential clients think about me and think about my spaces. I couldn't spin out thinking about, do they think that I shouldn't be charging this amount, or do they think that that amount isn't worth it for the value that's inside. I had to drop all preconceived notions about me. I had this same experience when a past client joined a smaller offer, and then after she unfollowed me, and like, this really killed me because this client was somebody that I had worked with for a very long time, and she would come in and out of my spaces And she even had me on her podcast like over a year ago. And for her to unfollow me, I was kind of like searching for the reason, like, what did I do? But the thing is like, I don't know what I could have possibly done except starting to not accept less, starting to charge more, starting to be more me in my content, speaking more of my mind and my thoughts and being a more expressed version of myself. And I had to be willing to do that and experience the risk of people getting majorly fucking turned off by it and them not being able to meet me at that place. Like, that had to be okay. Right? So I had many of those instances last year where I noticed that there were people who had been with me or at least been in my like orbit for years and years, just kind of decide to taper off, just kind of leave and not follow me anymore or not even watch my stories anymore, even though they did follow me. And I was like, I am paying way too much close attention to this when I know that the version of me who's making $250K plus a year isn't fucking worried about this, right? Like somebody who's making $500K a year, $1 million in a year, she doesn't have fucking time to worry about like, what does this person think about me? And that was like a huge realization I had to have, is like, they're gonna have the thoughts regardless. They're gonna think that regardless. And me trying to manipulate what somebody thinks about me was just another codependent tactic, because I thought, okay, well, if this person likes me, if this person thinks that I have something of value to give them, and I'm sure of that, I can feel good, instead of just assuming that there are people that are going to come with me and there's people who are not, and the people that are going to come with me are going to love the way I'm operating, or they're going to pick and choose the things that they love. Because I am certain that I say things that not all of my clients love, but that happens for me too. Like, I work with coaches who I don't agree with everything that they say, but that has to be okay, because like, I still respect them, I still love them, and that doesn't affect the way that I show up in their containers or how I see them. But I had to stop spending time and energy on thinking about how does this person see me, and instead work on how do I see me. Okay? Another thing that happened was I had a client that was a past client come back and wanted to, get a package that I didn't offer. And she was transparent in the fact that, I've seen what you charge and I can't afford that. And I went back on my own standards and what I believed, and I reduced my rate for her, and she still didn't buy. And this was such a good example for me to see of how I lowered my leadership and I went back on my word, because I was trying to be seen as a good person. I was trying to be like, you know what, I can help this person. Why am I being so stubborn with my rates and blah, 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 blah. And it just turned into a situation where I was like, this is not how I operate. If I want to make this amount of money, and it's not about, sure, I could help everyone in the world, but like, what is that taking away from me? And how is that actually not the kind of leader that I want to be? If somebody can just come in and I can change my rates on a dime or my standards on a dime, like, what kind of leader does that pose me as? And what do I think about myself when I do things like that? And I saw that huge leak, and I was actually so grateful that she didn't sign on at that package. And I was grateful for that experience, because I learned that like, I can't be doing that shit anymore. And if that means I lose the sale, then I lose the sale. Right? And for a long, long time, I was not comfortable with losing the sale. I would rather get the sale and deal with the repercussions after. And this was a very difficult lesson that the universe continuously fucking showed me, that there is a cost to that. When you sign somebody who is a red flag, when you sign somebody at a rate that is so much lower than what you actually desire to be compensated at, when you do something that goes against your intuition fucking screaming at you, you think it's because, you know what, I'm gonna deal with the cost later. I would rather be paid. That is completely out of scarcity, and the cost always comes to your identity, to your character, to the way that you see yourself, or the cost comes at later down the line, that red flag client being a red flag, you having a client that is paying this amount and a client that is paying this amount, and they're so drastically different, and it makes you feel uncertain and wobbly in what you actually want to charge, right? And when you come up against these instances, again, it feels easier to just get the sale instead of really trusting your intuition and your judgment and being like, what is this going to potentially cost me later? And I was so used to judging the cost in front of me instead of thinking about the long-term effect, the longevity of the decision I was making. And this was a big example for me in terms of being like, if I would have led myself in this way, I would have so much more respect for myself. I would see that, of course, I'm worthy of charging XYZ because that's how I led myself. So I had to have that very blatant experience for me to be like, I'm fucking done doing this, because I had done that so many times before. I also had an experience where I had a client that defaulted on a payment. Also, this has happened tons of times before. It is no big fucking deal. But when I was communicating with this client, she saw me as cold, uncaring, unprofessional. And ironically, I was trying to remain professional in the way that I was like communicating with this client. And it definitely came off cold. It came off uncaring. It came off like it was strictly business, but that's what it costs me from being how I used to be and being lenient and allowing things to not be organized. Like, I think I talked about this on the podcast too, but I had an experience in October where I had 3 one-to-one clients who were on 3-month contracts, and all 3 of them didn't re-sign, and I expected them to. But that was a big leadership leak for me as well, because what had happened is I took all their word for it. Like, I didn't get contract signed. I said like, oh, you can just let me know, instead of being really firm in the fact that like, hey, I have a way of doing things. Please let me know by this date. If it's a yes, you have to sign a contract, put down a deposit, blah, 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 all of the things, right? So it became this kind of like situation where I was like, oh, where am I operating as if this is just a fucking like free for all, and I'm operating like a friend, or like, of course I love my clients. Of course I'm obsessed with my clients, but that doesn't need to give way to my standards and my policies and my boundaries. And where does that mean that I have to be a little bit cold and seemingly uncaring when actually I do care a lot, but this is a business and I am running a business. And truthfully, if I'm being really honest with you too, you show people how to respect you. And when people believe that they can like get away with things, you know, like stories about clients that default on their payments and then they don't say anything because they know that you don't usually say anything to them until like a week later or something, and they still stay in the container. Like, there are all of these instances where people will be like, yeah, but like we have a really good relationship, so she'll understand. And sometimes you have to risk the relationship in that way. Sometimes you need to risk the relationship in order to be like, hey, this is a standard that like I am not okay with, and this keeps happening. And that's what was the conversation with this client. This was the second time in a row that she had defaulted, and I was really clean and clear about it, and she was triggered because she was feeling emotional because of her financial situation, and the way that she responded was in that emotional way. And because I was kind of calling her out, she was like, okay, now I'm going to put all of this on my coach, instead of being like, you're right, like I needed to communicate that this payment was going to default and that I was going to be able to figure it out on this date. And that was all I was asking for, was like communication. Let's clear it up so the invoice can be paid and we can carry on as normal. So I also had to be like, okay, this is another example where I have to allow people to have thoughts about me if they think I'm cold and uncaring, but I know the truth. I am a very warm person. Of course I friggin' care, duh, but I also have a fucking business. And sometimes, again, especially as women, people will see us doing something in a business-like way or in a more masculine way, I guess you could say, and because of their own thoughts, because of their own feelings, they're going to see it as cold and uncaring, blah, 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 blah. And you can't let that stop you from being the version of you that you know you need to be to get shit done and to be a leader inside of your business. Now, here's what all of these things have in common, because they're all very different experiences. The reason why I had such a hard time with this was because I really thought that I would be the special one. Like, I really thought that I would be able to get through to the other side unscathed. I didn't want to have to piss anyone off. I didn't want to have to make people have thoughts about me or do anything to upset someone else, because they would always understand my true intentions, right? But trying to avoid these very normal parts of growing a business and outgrowing people that aren't meant to come with me slowed me the fuck down tremendously. And I say this to you so you can learn from it, but honestly, you may have to learn this over and over again for yourself before you get to that 20K a month mark, 30K a month, 50K a month, as you take on more people and work with more people and have more at stake. Right? And when I decided to shed it all and raise the bar for how I was operating, that's when I fucking quantum leapt in Q3 and Q4 and stacked almost 200K in sales over just a couple of months. In my content, like, I was able to be a fucking raging bitch with a spicy direct opinion and shit to say, but in my clients and in my business, I was still operating with nice girl energy and hoping that no one would get mad at me. And when I finally did stand up for myself, I did shit without permission. I acted like a leader instead of a friend. The standard for the clients I was calling in became higher, and people did fall away. And this doesn't mean that they aren't great people, but it meant that they couldn't come with me on this journey, right? And that's when I raised my rates, and the actual clients who were like ready to do the work with me came in. And I genuinely am so obsessed with the clients I have now. And I also know that I'm calling them in more and more. And you might still be playing the nice girl behind the scenes because your fucking brain is wired to focus on what it's losing instead of what it's gaining. And it's a natural, biologically programmed response to care about the opinion of others, to fear losing clients and losing followers or subscribers, to worry about people not liking you or being mad at you. But if you don't learn to program yourself in the other fucking direction, your business will collapse under the pressure of who you think you should be and what other people think that you should do. The problem was not that I had multiple interactions like these. They were all a long time coming, and they are all inevitable parts about growing a business with humans as your clients. If you want fucking nothing to happen and for you to feel so emotionally safe and for everything to be smooth sailing, work with robots, right? Like, work like with animals. I don't friggin' know. But like, when you fucking work with humans, you are going to have interactions like I had, because people are going to do people things. They have thoughts and feelings that are completely separate from yours. They have completely separate experiences and stories and lives. And all your client interactions are going to be different, and there's going to be issues that arise, and it doesn't mean a fucking thing about you and your work. You know your heart, you know your goodness, and you know that when you hold your standards and are treated and paid like you deserve to be treated and paid, your clients are going to fucking soar, and your results are only going to get better and better and better, and you gain that self-trust and belief in yourself that no matter what happens, right, even when you deal with a difficult client situation or something happens here or something happens there, you can fucking handle it, and you handle it like a leader. And if you're in that in-between right now where your content is bold but your decisions are still cautious, where you want premium clients but you keep bending when it's uncomfortable, where you know your next level requires disappointing people that you've outgrown, this is the exact kind of work that we do so you can scale to 10K to 20K months inside of the Real Deal Mastermind. Inside the mastermind, we build leadership standards that don't disappear if someone is unhappy. We build conviction in what you charge, and that shit doesn't crumble when a past client potentially comes back and asks for a discount. You create nervous system regulation within yourself so you can hold the discomfort without self-sabotaging all of your fucking success. You learn how to create a signature offer that you don't just water down to feel safe and call in beginners, and you create consistent sales, consistent 10K to 20K months that come from self-trust, not people-pleasing. And this is where you learn how to stop leading from the fear of losing and start leading from certainty in yourself and in your work. So reach out to me on Instagram, send me a DM on Instagram with podcast so we can talk about your exclusive offer for listening to this podcast and inquiring about the mastermind. And I love you guys so much. I'll see you next week.